June. I wake up at dawn. The light makes me squint. Where is it coming from? Behind me? And for an instant, I'm disoriented, unsure of why I'm sleeping in an abandoned building facing the ocean with sea daisies growing at my feet. A sharp pain in my stomach forces a gasp out of me. I've been stabbed, I realize in a panic. And then I remember the skiz fight and the knife and the boy who saved me. Tess hurries over when she sees me stir. How are you feeling? She still looks wary of me. Sore, I mutter. I don't want her to think that she wrapped my wound badly, so I add, much better than yesterday, though. It takes me a minute to realize that the boy who saved me is sitting in the corner of the room, dangling his legs over the balcony and looking out toward the water. I have to hide my embarrassment. On a normal day, with no knife wound, I never would have let a detail like that go unnoticed. He went somewhere last night. When I was slipping in and out of sleep, I'd made a mental note of the direction he took, south, toward Union Station. I hope you don't mind waiting a few hours before eating, he says to me. He's wearing his old newsboy cap, but I can see a few strands of white blonde hair beneath it. We lost the skiz bet, so there's no money left for food right now. He blames me for his loss. I just nod. I recall the sound of Day's crackly voice from the speakers and compare it quietly to this boy's. He looks at me for a while without smiling, as if he knows what I'm doing, then returns to his vigil. No, I can't be sure the voice belongs to him. Thousands of people in Lake could match that voice. I realize that the mouthpiece in my cheek is still turned off. Thomas must be furious with me. Tess, I say, I'm going to head back down to the water. I'll be back in a minute. You sure you can make it by yourself? She asks. I'll be fine, I smile. If you see me floating unconscious out to sea, though, by all means, come and get me. The steps of this building definitely used to be part of a stairwell, but now they sit open to the outside. I get my feet and limp down the stairs one at a time, careful not to slip off the side and plummet down to the water. Whatever Tess did last night seems to be working. Although my side still burns, the pain is a little duller, and I could walk with less effort than yesterday. I make it down to the bottom of the building faster than I thought I would. Tess reminds me of Matthias, of how he'd nursed me back to health on the day of his induction. But I can't handle memories of Matthias right now. I clear my throat and concentrate on making my way to the water's edge. The rising eastern sun is now high enough to bathe the entire lake in a shade of murky gold, and I can see the tiny strip of land that separates the lake from the Pacific Ocean. I head all the way down to the floor of the building that sits right at the water's surface. Every wall on this floor is collapsed, so I can walk straight out to the building's edge and ease my legs into the water. When I look into the depths, I can see that this old library continues for many floors, perhaps 15 stories tall, judging from how the buildings on the shore sit and how the land slopes from the shoreline. Approximately 6 stories should be underwater. Tess and the boy sit at the top of the building, several stories above me, safely out of hearing range. I look back at the horizon, click my tongue, and turn on my microphone. Static buzzes from my earpiece. A second later, I hear a familiar voice. Ms. I Paris? Thomas says. Is that you? I'm here, I murmur. I'm well. I'd like to know what you've been up to, Ms. I Paris. I've been trying to contact you for the past 24 hours. I was ready to send some soldiers to collect you. And you and I both know how happy Commander Jameson would be about that. I'm well, I say again. My hand digs into my pocket and pulls out Day's pendant. Got a minor injury in a skiz fight. Nothing serious. I hear a sigh from the other end. Well, you're not going to go that long again with your mic off, you hear me? He says. Fine. Did you find anything yet? I glance up to where the boy is swinging his legs. Not sure. A boy and a girl helped me get out of the skiz chaos. The girl bandaged up my wound. I'm staying with him temporarily until I can walk better. Walk better? Thomas's voice rises. What kind of a minor injury is this? Just a knife wound, no big deal. Thomas makes a choking sound, but I ignore it and keep going. Anyway, that's not the point. The boy made a fancy little dust bomb to get us out of the skiz mob. He has some skills. I don't know who he is, but I'll get more information. Think he's Day? Thomas asks. Day doesn't seem like the kind of boy who goes around saving people. Most of Day's past crimes involve saving people, all except Matthias. I take a deep breath. No, I don't think so. I lower my voice until it's barely a whisper. Best not to throw wild guesses at Thomas right now, lest he decide to jump the gun and send troops after me. Commander Jameson will boot me right off for patrol if we do something expensive like that, with nothing to show for it. Besides, these two got me out of serious trouble. But they might know something about Day. Thomas is silent for a moment. I hear some commotion in the background, some static, and then his faint voice along with Commander Jameson's. He must be telling her about my injury, asking her if it's safe to keep me out here alone. I give an annoyed sigh, as if I've never been wounded before. After a few minutes, he comes back on again. Well, be careful. Thomas pauses for a moment. Commander Jameson says to keep you on your mission if your injury isn't bothering you too much. She's preoccupied with the patrol right now. But I'm warning you, if your mic goes dark again for more than a few hours, I'm going to send soldiers after you, whether it blows your cover or not. You understand? I fight to contain my irritation. Commander Jameson doesn't believe I can accomplish anything on this mission. Her lack of interest is imprinted in every word of Thomas's response. As for Thomas, he rarely sounds so firm with me. I can only imagine how stressed out he must have been over the last few hours. Yes, sir, I say. When Thomas doesn't respond, I look up toward the boy again. I remind myself to watch him more closely when I get upstairs and not let this injury distract me. I stuff the pendant back into my pocket and rise. I observe my rescuer all day as I follow him around the Alta sector of Los Angeles. I take note of everything, no matter how small the detail. He favors his left leg, for instance. The limp is so slight that I can't tell when he's walking beside Tess and me. I can see it when he sits down or gets up, the slightest hesitation when he bends his knee. It's either a serious injury that never quite healed or a minor but recent one. A bad fall, maybe. That's not his only injury. Now and then he winces when he moves his arm. After he does this a couple of times, I realize he must have some sort of wound on his upper arm that stretches painfully whenever he reaches too far up or down. His face is perfectly symmetrical, a mix of Anglo and Asian, beautiful behind the dirt and smudges. His right eye is slightly paler than his left. At first, I think it might be a trick of the light, but I notice it again when we pass by a bakery and admire the loaves of bread. I wonder how it happened and whether it's something he was born with. I notice other things too, how familiar he is with streets far from the lake sector, as if he could walk them blindfolded. How nimble his fingers are when they smooth down the wrinkles of his shirt's waist. How he looks at buildings as if memorizing them. Tess never refers to him by name. Just like how they call me girl, they use nothing to identify who he is. When I grow tired and lightheaded from walking, he stops all of us and finds water for me while I rest. He can sense my exhaustion without my uttering a word. Afternoon approaches. We escape the worst of the sun by hanging out near the market vendors in the poorest part of Lake. Tess squints at the stands from under our awning. We're about good 50 feet away from them. She's nearsighted, but somehow she's able to pick out the differences between the fruit vendors and the vegetable vendors, the faces of the various merchants, who has money and who doesn't. I know this because I can see the subtle movements in her face, her satisfaction at making something out, or her frustration at not being able to. How do you do that? I ask her. Tess glances at me. Her eyes refocus. Do what? You're nearsighted. How can you see so much of what's around you? Tess seems surprised for a moment, then impressed. Beside her, I notice the boy glance at me. I can tell subtle differences between colors, even though they may look a little blurry, Tess replies. I can see silver notes peeking out of that man's purse, for example. She flicks her eyes toward one of the customers at a vendor. I nod at her. Very clever of you. Tess blushes and glances down at her shoes. For a moment, she looks so sweet that I can't help but laugh. Instantly, I feel guilty. How can I laugh so soon after my brother's death? These two have a strange way of making me lose my composure. You're a perceptive one, girl, the boy says quietly. His eyes are locked on mine. I can see why you've survived on the streets. I just shrug. It's the only way to survive, isn't it? The boy shifts his eyes away. I release a breath. I realize that I've been holding it while his eyes kept me frozen in place. Maybe you should be the one to help us steal some food, not me, he continues. Vendors always trust a girl more, especially one like you. What do you mean by that? You get right to the point. I can't help smiling. As do you. As we settle down to watch the stands, I make some notes to myself. I can afford to linger with these two for one more night until I heal enough to return to tracking down information about Day. Who knows? Maybe they'll even give me a clue. When the evening finally comes and the sun's heat begins to fade, we make our way back to the water's edge and search for a place to camp. All around us I see candlelight flickering to life from window to glassless window, and here and there the locals light small fires along the edges of alleys. New shifts of street police begin making their rounds, 5 nights out in the field now. I still can't get used to the crumbling walls, the lines of worn clothing hanging from balconies, the clusters of young beggars hoping for a bite to eat from passers-by. But at the very least, my disdain has faded. I think back with some shame on the night of Matthias's funeral, when I left a giant steak untouched on my plate, without a second thought. Tess walks ahead of us, completely unperturbed by her surroundings, her stride cheerful and carefree. I can hear her humming some faint tune. "Elector's Waltz," I murmur, recognizing the song. The boy glances at me from where he's walking by my side. He grins. "Sounds like you're a fan of Lincoln, yeah?" I can't tell him that I own copies of all of Lincoln's songs, as well as some signed memorabilia, that I've seen her perform political anthems live at a city banquet, or that she once wrote a song honoring each of the Republic's warfront generals. Instead, I smile. "Yeah, I guess so." He returns my smile. His teeth are beautiful, the loveliest I've seen so far on these streets. "Tess loves music," he replies. "She always drags me past the bars around here and makes us wait nearby while she listens to whatever anthems they're playing inside. I don't know, must be a girl thing." Half an hour later, the boy starts to notice my fatigue again. He calls Tess back and guides us over to one of the 2 alleys where a series of large metal trash bins sits wedged between 2 walls. He pushes one of them forward to give us some room. Then he crouches down behind it, motions for Tess and me to sit down, and begins unbuttoning his vest. I blush scarlet and thank every god in the world for the darkness surrounding us. "I'm not cold and I'm not bleeding," I say to him. "Keep her clothes on." The boy looks at me. I would have expected his bright eyes to look dimmer in the night, but instead, they seem to reflect the light coming from the windows above us. He's amused. "Who said anything about you, sweetheart?" He takes off his vest, folds it neatly, and places it on the ground next to one of the trash bin's wheels. Tess sits down and unceremoniously rests her head on it, as if it's an old habit. I clear my throat. "Of course," I mutter. I ignore the boy's low laugh. Tess stays up and talks with us, but soon her eyelids grow heavy and she falls asleep with her head on the boy's vest. The boy and I lapse into silence. I let my eyes linger on Tess. "She seems very fragile," I whisper. "Yeah, but she's tougher than she looks." I glance up at him. "You're lucky to have her with you." My eyes go to his leg. He sees my gesture and quickly adjusts his posture. "She must have come in handy when she fixed up your leg." He realizes that I've noticed his limp. "Nah, I got this a long time ago." He hesitates, then decides against saying anything more about it. "How's your wound healing, by the way?" I wave him off. "No big deal." But I grit my teeth even as I say it. Walking all around all day hasn't helped things, and the pain is returning like wildfire. The boy sees the strain on my face. "We should change those bandages." He gets up and, without disturbing Tess deftly pulls a roll of white wraps from her pocket. "I'm not as good as she is," he whispers, "but I'd rather not wake her." He sits beside me and loosens the bottom 2 buttons of my shirt, then pushes it up until he exposes my bandaged waist. His skin brushes against mine. I try to keep my focus on his hands. He reaches behind one of his boots and pulls out what looks like a compact kitchen knife. Patternless silver handle, worn edge. He's used it plenty of times before, and to saw through things much tougher than cloth. One of his hands rests against my stomach. Even though his fingers are calloused from years on the streets, they're so careful and gentle that I feel the heat rising in my cheeks. "Hold still," he mutters. Then he places the knife flat between my skin and the bandages and rips the cloth. I wince. He lifts the bandage away from my wound. Tiny trickles of blood still seep from where Cade's knife stabbed me, but thankfully there are no signs of infection. Tess knows her stuff. The boy pulls on the rest of the old bandages away from my waist, tosses them aside, and starts wrapping the new bandages around me. "We'll stay here until late morning," he says as he works. "We shouldn't have traveled so much today. But, putting some distance between you and the Skiz folks wasn't such a bad idea." Now I can't help looking at his face. This is a boy who must have barely passed his trial. But that doesn't make sense. He doesn't act like a desperate street kid. He has so many more sides to him that I wonder if he has always lived in these poor sectors. He glances at me now, notices me studying him, and pauses for a second. Some secret emotion darts across his eyes. A beautiful mystery. He must have similar questions about me, how I'm able to pick out so many details of his life. Perhaps he's even wondering what I'll figure out about him next. He's so close to my face now that I can feel his breath against my cheek. I swallow. He draws a little nearer. For an instant, I think he might kiss me. Then he quickly looks back down at my wound. His hands brush against my waist as he works. I realize his cheeks are rosy too. He's as flushed as I am. Finally, he tightens the bandage, tugs my shirt back into place, and pulls away. He leans against the wall beside me and rests his arms against his knees. "Tired?" I shake my head. My eyes wander to the clothes hanging overhead, several stories up. If we run out of bandages, that's where I can get some fresh ones. "I think I can leave you guys alone for another day," I say after a while. I know I'm slowing you down, but I feel an urge of regret even as the words come out of my mouth. Strange. I don't want to leave them so soon. There's something comforting about hanging around with Tess and this boy, as if the absence of Matthias hasn't entirely stripped me of everyone who cares about me. What am I thinking? This is a boy from the slums. I've been trained to deal with guys like this, to watch them from the other side of the glass. "Where will you go?" the boy asks. I refocus. My voice comes out cool and collected. "East, maybe. I'm more used to the inner sectors." The boy keeps his eyes forward. "You can stay longer, if all you're going to do is wander the streets somewhere else. I could use a good fighter like you. We can make quick cash in Skiz fights and split our food supplies. We'll both do better." He offers this idea with such sincerity that I have to smile. I decide not to ask why he doesn't fight in Skiz himself. "Thanks, but I prefer to work alone." He doesn't miss a beat. "Fair enough." And with that, he leans his head back against the wall, sighs, and closes his eyes. I watch him for a moment, waiting for him to expose those brilliant eyes to the world again. But he doesn't. After a while, I hear his breathing grow steady and see his head droop, and I know he's fallen asleep. I think about contacting Thomas, but I'm not in the mood to hear his voice right now. I'm not even sure why. Tomorrow morning, then, first thing, I lean my head back to and stare up at the clothes hanging above us. Other than the distant sounds of night shift crowds and occasional Jumbotron broadcasts, it's a peaceful evening, just like at home. The silence makes me think of Matthias. I make sure that the sound of my crying doesn't wake Tess and the boy. Day. I almost kissed the girl last night. But nothing good can come out of falling for someone on the streets. That's the worst weakness you can have, right up there with having a family stuck in a quarantine zone or a street orphan needing you. And yet, a part of me still wants to kiss her, no matter how cracked a move it might be. This girl can point out a detail on the streets a mile away. These shutters on that building's third-floor windows must have been scavenged from a rich sector, solid cherry wood. With a knife and in one throw, she can skewer a hot dog from an unattended stand. I can see her intelligence in every question she asks me and every observation she makes. But at the same time, there's an innocence that makes her completely different from most of the people I've met. She's not cynical or jaded. The streets haven't broken her. They've made her stronger instead. Like me. Throughout the morning, we hunt for more opportunities to make money. Naive police to pickpocket, stuff to trash bins in to resell, unguarded pier crates to pry open. And when that's done, we find a new spot to camp for the night. I try to keep my thoughts on Eden, on the money I need to collect before it's too late, but I start thinking up new ways to mess with the Republic's war campaign instead. I could hitch a ride on an airship, siphon off its precious fuel, then sell it on the market, or divvy it up to people who need it. I could destroy the airship altogether before it heads off to the war front, or target the electric grids of Batala and the airfield bases, cut their power and shut them down. These thoughts keep me occupied. But every now and then, when I steal a glance at the girl, or feel her eyes on me, I helplessly drift back to thinking about her. June. Nearly 2,000 hours, at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit. The boy and I sit together in the back of another alley while Tess sleeps a short distance away. The boy has given her his vest again. I watch as he files his nails down by scraping them with the edge of his knife. He's taken the cap off his head for once and combed through the tangles in his hair. He's in a good mood. "You want a sip?" he asks me. A bottle of nectar wine sits between us. It's cheap stuff, probably made from those bland sea grapes that grow in ocean water, but the boy acts like this wine is the best thing in the world. He'd stolen a case of bottles from the shop at Winter Sector's Edge earlier in the evening and sold all but this one for a grand total of 650 notes. Never ceases to amaze me how quickly he gets around the sectors. His agility is on par with top students at Drake. "I'll have some if you do," I say. "Can't let your stolen goods go to waste, can I?" He grins at me. I watch as he stabs his knife into the bottle's cork, then pops it out and throws his head back for a long swig. He wipes a thumb across his mouth and smiles at me. "Delicious," he says. "Have some." I accept the bottle and take a small sip before handing it back to him. Salty aftertaste, just as I thought. At least it might ease the pain in my side. We continue taking turns, large swigs for him, small sips for me, until he recorks the bottle, seeming to put it away the instant he feels it dulling his awareness. Even so, his eyes look glossier, and the blue irises take on a lovely reflective sheen. He may not let himself lose his ability to focus, but I can tell that the wine has relaxed him. "So tell me," I decide to ask, "why do you need so much money?" The boy laughs. "Is that a serious question? Don't we all need more money? Can we ever have enough?" "You like answering all of my questions with your own questions?" He laughs again, but when he speaks, his voice has a sad tinge to it. "Money is the most important thing in the world, you know. Money can buy you happiness, and I don't care what anyone else thinks. It'll buy you relief, status, friends, safety, all sorts of things." I watch as his eyes take a faraway look. "It seems like you're in an awful hurry to stock up." This time, he shoots me an amused look. "Why wouldn't I be? You've probably lived on the streets as long as I have. You should know the answer to that, yeah?" I look down. I don't want him to see the truth. "I guess so." We sit in silence for a moment. The boy speaks up. When he does, there's such a tender quality to his voice that I can't help looking up at him. "I don't know if anyone's ever told you this," he begins. He doesn't blush, and his eyes don't dart away. Instead, I find myself staring into a pair of oceans, one perfect, the other blemished by that tiny ripple. "You're very attractive." I've been complimented on my appearance before, but never in his tone of voice. Of all the things he said, I don't know why this catches me off guard, but it startles me so much that without thinking I blurt out, "I could say the same about you." I pause. "In case you didn't know." A slow grin spreads across his face. "Oh, trust me, I know." I laugh. "Nice to hear something honest." I can't break away from his stare. Finally, I manage to add, "Well, I think you've had too much wine, my friend." I keep my voice as light as I can. "A little sleep will do you good." The words have barely left my mouth when the boy leans closer and places his hand on my cheek. All my training would have me block his hand and pin it to the ground. But now, I do nothing but sit perfectly still. He pulls me to him. I take a breath before he touches his lips to mine. I taste the wine on his lips. He kisses me gently at first, and then, as if he's reaching for something more, he pushes me against the wall and kisses me harder. His lips are warm and so soft. His hair brushes against my face. I try to focus. Not the first time. He's definitely kissed other girls before, and quite a few at that. He seems like he's short of breath. The details flit away. I grab at them in vain. He takes me a moment to realize I'm kissing him just as hungrily. I feel the knife at his waist against my own skin, and I tremble. It's too warm here. There's too much heat on my face. He pulls away first. We stare at each other in bewildered silence, like neither of us can quite grasp what just happened. Then he regains his composure, and as I struggle to regain mine, he leans back against the wall beside me and sighs. "Sorry," he murmurs. He gives me a look laced with mischief. I couldn't help it, but at least now it's over with. I stare at him a while longer, still unable to speak. My mind screams at me to collect my thoughts. The boy returns my look. Then he smiles, as if he knows what sort of effect he has, and turns away. I begin breathing again. That's when I see a gesture which jolts my mind completely back into place. Before he lies down to sleep, he grabs at something around his neck. It's such an unconscious movement that I doubt he even realizes he did it. I stare at his neck, but I see nothing hanging around it. He had grabbed at the ghost of a necklace, the ghost of some trinket or thread. And that's when I remember, with a nauseating feeling, the pendant in my pocket. Day's pendant. Day. When the girl's finally fallen asleep, I leave her with Tess and head off to visit my family again. The cooler air clears my throat. Once I'm a fair distance from the alley, I take a deep breath and quicken my pace. I shouldn't have done it, I tell myself. I shouldn't have kissed her. I especially shouldn't be glad that I did it. But I am. I can still feel her lips against mine, the smooth, soft skin of her face and arms, the slight trembling of her hands. I've kissed plenty of beautiful girls before, but not like this one. I'd wanted more. I can't believe I managed to pull myself away. So much for warning myself against falling for people on the streets. Now, I force myself to concentrate on meeting up with John. I try to ignore the strange X on my family's door and make my way directly to the floorboards lining the side of the porch. Candles flicker by the shuttered bedroom window. My mother must be up late watching Eden. I crouch in the darkness for a while, look over my shoulder at the empty streets, then push aside the board and fall to my knees. Something stirs in the shadows across the street. I pause for a second and squint into the night. Nothing. When I don't see anything else, I lower my head and crawl under the porch. John's warming some sort of soup in the kitchen. I utter a trio of low whistles that sounds like a cricket. Takes a few tries before John hears it and turns around. Then I leave the porch and head around the house's back door, where I meet my brother in the darkness. "I've got 1,600 notes," I whisper. I show him the pouch. "Almost enough for cures. How's Eden?" John shakes his head. The anxiety on his face unnerves me, because I always expect him to be the strongest of us. "Not good," he says. "He's lost more weight, but he's still alert, and he recognizes us. I think he has a few more weeks." I nod quietly. I don't want to think about the possibility of losing Eden. "I promise I'll have the money soon. All I need is one more lucky break and I'll be there, and we'll have it for him." "You're being careful, right?" he asks. "In the dark, we can pass for twins. Same hair, same eyes, same expression. I don't want you putting yourself in unnecessary danger. If there's any way for me to help you, I'll do it. Maybe I can sneak out with you sometimes and—" I scowl. "Don't be stupid. If the soldiers catch you, you'll all die. You know that." John's frustrated expression makes me feel guilty for dismissing his help so quickly. "I'm faster this way, seriously. Better than only one of us is out there hunting for the money. You won't do Mom any good if you're dead." John nods, although I can tell he wants to say more. I avoid it by turning away. "I've got to go," I say. "I'll see you soon." June. Day must have thought I'd fallen asleep, but I see him get up and leave in the middle of the night, so I follow him. He breaks into a quarantine zone, enters a house marked with a 3-lined X, and reappears several minutes later. It's all I need to know. I climb to the roof of a nearby building. Once there, I crouch in the shadows of a chimney and turn my mic on. I'm so angry with myself that I can't stop my voice from shaking. I'd let myself get carried away with the last person I ever wanted to like. That I ever wanted to ache for. Maybe Day didn't kill Matthias, I tell myself. Maybe it was someone else. God, am I making excuses to protect this boy now? I've acted like an idiot in front of Matthias's murderer. Have the streets of Lake turned me into some simple-minded girl? Have I just shamed the memory of my brother? Thomas, I whisper. I found him. A full minute of static passes before I hear Thomas answer me. When he does, he sounds oddly detached. Can you repeat that, Ms. I. Paris? My temper rises. I said I found him. Day. He just visited a house in one of Lake's quarantine zones, a house with a 3-lined X on its door. Corner of Figueroa and Watson. Are you sure? Thomas sounds more alert now. You're absolutely sure. I take the pendant out of my pocket. Yes, no doubt about it. Some commotion on the other side. His voice grows excited. Corner of Figueroa and Watson. That's the special plague case we're meant to investigate tomorrow morning. You sure it's Day? He asks again. Yes. Medic trucks will be at the house tomorrow. We're to take the inhabitants to the central hospital. Then send for extra troops. I want backup when Day shows up to protect his family. I remember the way Day had crawled under the floorboards. He'll have no time to get out, so he'll probably hide them somewhere in the house. We should take them to Batala Hall's hospital wing. No one's to be hurt. I want them there for questioning. Thomas seems to be taken aback by my tone. You'll have your troops, he manages to say. And I hope to hell you're right. The feel of Day's lips, our heated kiss, and his hands running across my skin, it should all mean nothing to me now. Worse than nothing. I am right. I return to the alley before Day can find me missing. Day. During the few hours of sleep I managed to get before dawn, I dream of home. At least, it seems like the home I remember. John sits with our mother at one end of the dining table, reading to her from a book of old Republic tales. Mom nods encouragingly to him when he gets through an entire page without flipping words or letters around. I smile at them from where I stand up by the door. John is the strongest of us, but he has a patient, gentle streak that I didn't inherit. A trait from our father. Eden is doodling something on paper at the other side of the table. Eden always seems to be drawing in my dreams. He never looks up, but I can tell he's listening to John's story as well, laughing at the appropriate places. Then I realize that the girl is standing next to me. I hold her hand. She gives me a smile, one that fills the room with light, and I smile back. I'd like to meet your mother, I say to her. She shakes her head. When I look back to the dining table, John and Mom are still there, but Eden's gone. The girl's smile fades. She looks at me with tragic eyes. Eden is dead, she says. A distant siren shakes me out of my sleep. I lie quietly for a while, eyes open, trying to catch my breath. My dream is still seared into my mind. I focus on the sound of the siren to distract myself. Then I realize I'm not hearing the normal wail of a police siren, nor is it an ambulance's siren. This is a siren from a military medic truck, the ones used for transporting injured soldiers to the hospital. It's louder and higher pitched than the others because military trucks get first priority. Except, we have no injured soldiers coming back to Los Angeles. They get treated at the warfront's border. The other thing these trucks are used for around here is to transport special plague cases to the labs due to their better emergency equipment. Even Tess recognizes the sound. Where are they going? She asks. I don't know, I murmur back. I sit up and look around. The girl looks like she's been awake for a while already. She sits several feet away with her back against the wall, her eyes pointed out toward the street, her face grave with concentration. She seems tense. Morning, I say to her. My eyes dart to her lips. Did I really kiss her last night? She doesn't look at me. Her expression doesn't change. Your family had their door marked, didn't they? Tess looks at her in surprise. I stare at the girl in silence, not sure how to respond. It's the first time anyone other than Tess has brought up my family to me. You followed me last night? I tell myself that I should be angry, but I don't feel anything except confusion. She must have followed me out of curiosity. I'm amazed, shocked, really, at how silently she can travel. But something seems different about the girl this morning. Last night, she was as into me as I was into her. But today, she's distant, withdrawn. Have I done something to piss her off? The girl looks directly at me. Is that what you're saving all that money for? A plague cure? She's testing me, but I don't know why. Yes, I say. Why do you care? You're too late, she says, because today the plague patrol is coming for your family. They're taking them away. June. I don't have to say much more to convince Day to move, and the medic truck sirens, almost certainly headed for Figueroa and Watson, have come by just as Thomas promised they would. What do you mean? Day says. The shock hasn't even hit him yet. What do you mean they're coming for my family? How do you know this? Don't question it. You don't have time for that. I hesitate. Day's eyes look so terrified, so vulnerable, that suddenly it takes all my strength to lie to him. I try to draw on the anger I felt last night. I did see you visit your family's quarantine zone last night, and I heard some guards talking about today's sweep. They mentioned the house with the 3-lined X. Hurry, I'm trying to help you, and I'm telling you that you have to go to them right now. I've taken advantage of Day's greatest weakness. He doesn't hesitate, doesn't stop to question what I say, doesn't even wonder why I didn't tell him right away. Instead, he leaps to his feet, pinpoints the direction that the sirens are coming from, and darts out of the alley. I feel a surprising pang of guilt. He trusts me. Truly, stupidly, wholeheartedly trusts me. In fact, I don't know if anyone has ever taken my word so readily before. Maybe not even Matthias. Tess watches him go with a look of increasing fright. Come on, let's follow him, Tess exclaims. She jumps to her feet and takes my hands. He might need our help. No, I snap. You wait here. I'll follow him. Keep low and stay quiet. Someone will come back for you. I don't bother to wait for Tess's reply before I take off down the street. When I look over my shoulder, I see Tess standing in the alley with her wide eyes locked on my vanishing figure. I turn back around. Best to keep her out of this. If we arrest Day today, what will happen to her? I click my tongue and turn on my mic. Static blurs for a second in my tiny earpiece. Then I hear Thomas's voice. Talk to me, he says. What's going on? Where are you? Day's heading toward Figueroa and Watson right now. I'm on his tail. Thomas sucks in his breath. Right. We've already deployed. See you in a few. Wait for my word. No one's to be harmed. I start to say, but the static cuts off. I sprint down the street, my wound throbbing in protest. Day couldn't have gone far. He has less than a half-minute lead on me. I point myself in the direction that I remember Day going the previous night, south toward Union Station. Sure enough, before long, I see glimpses of Day's old cap peeking out far ahead of me in the crowd. All my anger and fear and anxiety now zero in on the back of his head. I have to force myself to keep enough distance between us so that he doesn't know I'm following him. A part of me recalls the way he saved me from the Skiz fight, that they helped me heal this burning wound in my side, that his hands had been so gentle. I wanted to scream at him. I want to hate him for confusing me so much. Stupid boy. It's a wonder you've evaded the government for so long. But you can't hide now, not when your own family or friends are at risk. I have no sympathy for a criminal, I remind myself harshly. Just a score to settle. Day. Usually, I'm grateful for the crowds on the streets of Lake. They're easy to slip in and out of, throwing off those who might be on your trail or hoping to pick a fight. I've lost count of the number of times I've used the busy streets to my advantage. But today, they only slow me down. Even with a shortcut along the lakeside, I'm running just barely in front of the sirens and won't have a chance to widen the gap before I reach my family's house. I won't have time to get them out, but I have to try. I have to reach them before the soldiers do. Occasionally, I pause to make sure the trucks are still going in the direction I think they are. Sure enough, they continue on a path straight for our neighborhood. I run faster. I don't even stop when I accidentally collide with an old man. He stumbles and falls against the pavement. "Sorry," I shout. I can hear him yelling at me, but I don't dare waste time looking back. I'm sweating by the time I near our house, still quiet and taped off as part of the quarantine. I sneak through the back alleys until I'm standing by our crumbling backyard fence. Then, I ease my way through a crack in the fence, push aside the loose board, and crawl underneath the porch. The sea daisies that I laid under the vents are still there, untouched, but they've already withered and died. Through the floor's gaps, I see my mother sitting at Eden's bedside. John is rinsing a washcloth in a nearby basin. My eyes dart to Eden. He looks worse now, as if all the color's been stripped away from his skin. His breath is shallow and raspy, so loud that I can hear it from down here. My mind screams for a solution. I could help John, Eden, and my mother escape right now, and risk running into the plague patrols or street police. Maybe we could find refuge in the usual spots Tess and I hide. John and my mother are certainly strong enough to run, but how would Eden keep up? John could only carry him for so long. Maybe I can find a way to sneak them onto a cargo train or help them escape inland to somewhere, I don't know. If the patrols are already after Eden, then it won't make things any worse if John and Mom leave their jobs and run. They've already been quarantined anyway. I could help them get to Arizona or maybe West Texas. And maybe after a while, maybe the patrols won't bother searching for them anymore. Besides, maybe I'm fooling myself to begin with. Maybe the girl's wrong and the patrols aren't even coming for my family. I can keep saving up for Eden's plague medicine. All my anxiety might be for nothing. But off in the distance, I hear the medic's truck sirens growing louder. They're coming for Eden. I make up my mind. I scramble under the porch and hurry to get to the back door. Out here, I can hear the medic trucks much more clearly. They're getting closer. I open the back door and dash up the few steps leading to our living room. I take a deep breath. Then, I kick open the door and rush into the light. My mother lets out a startled cry. John whirls around in my direction. We stand there for an instant, staring at each other, unsure of what to do. "What's wrong?" His face turns pale at my expression. "What are you doing here? Tell me what's happened." He tries to steady his voice, but he knows something's terribly wrong, something so serious that it forced me to reveal myself to my entire family. I pull the worn cap off my head. My hair tumbles down in a tangled mess. Mom holds a bandaged hand over her mouth. Her eyes grow suspicious, then they widen. "It's me, Mom," I say. "It's Daniel." I watch the different emotions flash across her face. Disbelief, joy, confusion. Before she takes a step forward, her eyes dart between John and me. I can't tell which shocks her more, that I'm alive or that John seems to know all about it. "Daniel?" she whispers. It's strange to hear her say my old name again. I rush to take Mom's injured hands in my own. They're shaking. There's no time to explain. I try to ignore the expression in her eyes. They were strong, bright blue once, just like mine, but sorrow has faded them. How do I face a mother who's thought I was dead for so many years? "They're coming for Eden. You have to hide him." "Daniel?" Her fingers brush the hair from my eyes. I'm suddenly her little boy again. "My Daniel? You're alive. This must be a dream." I take her by the shoulders. "Mom, listen. The plague patrol is coming, and they have a medic truck with them. Whatever virus Eden has, they're coming to get him. We have to hide you all." She studies me for a moment, then nods. She leads me back to Eden's bed. From up close, I can see that Eden's dark eyes have somehow turned black. There's absolutely no reflection in them, and I realize with horror that they're black because his irises are bleeding. Mom and I carefully help Eden sit up. His skin is burning hot. John gently lifts him onto his shoulder, whispering soothing words as he does. Eden lets out a pained yelp, and his head lolls to one side, resting against John's neck. "Connect the 2 circuits," he murmurs. The sirens continue to wail outside. They must be less than a couple blocks away by now. I exchange a desperate look with my mother. "Under the porch," she whispers. "There's no time to run." Neither John nor I argue. Mom takes my hand tightly in hers. We make our way out the back entrance. I stop for a second just outside, checking the direction and distance of the patrols. They're almost here. I hurry over to the porch and slide the board to one side. "Eden first," Mom whispers. John adjusts Eden on his shoulder, then kneels down and crawls into the space. I help Mom in the next. Then I scoot after them, wiping away any marks we made in the dirt and carefully lifting the board back into place. I hope it's good enough. We huddle into the darkest corner, where we can barely even see each other. I stare at the shafts of light coming through the vents. They slice the dirt floor into pieces and can just make out the crumpled sea daisies. The medic truck sirens sound distant for a moment. They're making a turn somewhere. And then all of a sudden, they're deafening. Heavy boots follow in their wake. Damn trots. They've stopped outside our home and are getting ready to force their way in. Stay here, I whisper. I twist my hair up over my head and then stuff it back inside my cap. I'm going to throw them off. No, it's John's voice. Don't go back there. It's too dangerous. I shake my head. Too dangerous for you if I stay. Trust me. My eyes flick to Mom, who's working hard to keep her own fear in check while telling Eden a story. I remember how calm she had always seemed when I was little, with her soothing voice and gentle smile. I nod at John. I'll be right back. Overhead, I hear someone bang on our door. Plague Patrol, a voice calls out. Open up! I dart over to the loose board, carefully pull it aside a couple of feet, and then squeeze my way out. I slide it carefully back into place. Our house's fence shields me from view, but through the cracks, I can see the soldiers waiting outside the door. I have to act quickly. They won't be expecting someone to fight back right now, especially someone they can't see. I hurry silently to the back of our house, get a good foothold on a loose brick, and fling myself upward. I grab the edge of our roof, then swing onto it. The soldiers can't see me up here, with our wide chimney and the shadows cast by the taller buildings around us. But I have a good view of them. In fact, the view makes me pause. Something's wrong here. We have at least a slim chance against one plague patrol, but there are far more than a dozen soldiers in front of our house. I count at least 20, maybe more, all with white masks tied tightly around their mouths. Some have full gas masks on. 2 military jeeps are parked next to the medic truck. In front of one, a high-ranking official with red tassels and a commander's hat stands waiting. Next to her is a dark-haired young man in a captain's uniform. And standing in front of him, unmoving and unprotected, is the girl. I frown, confused. They must have arrested her, and now they're using her for something. That means they must have caught Tess, too. I search the crowd, but Tess is nowhere to be seen. I turn back to the girl. She seems calm, unfazed by the sea of soldiers surrounding her. She tightens her own mask around her mouth. And then, in an instant, I realized why the girl had looked so familiar. Her eyes. Those dark, gold-flecked eyes. The young captain named Matthias. The one I'd escaped from on the night I raided the Los Angeles Central Hospital. He had the same exact eyes. Matthias must be her relative. Just like him, she works for the military. I can't believe my stupidity. I should have seen this earlier. I quickly scan the faces of the other soldiers, wondering if Matthias himself is here as well. But I just see the girl. They've sent her to hunt me down. And now, because of my idiocy, she has tracked me right to my family. She may have even killed Tess. I close my eyes. I'd trusted this girl. I'd been duped into kissing her, even falling for her. The thought makes me blind with rage. A loud crash rings out from our house. I hear shouts, then screams. The soldiers have found them. They've broken through the floorboards and dug them out. Go down there. Where are you hiding on this roof? Help them. But that would only reveal their relation to me, and their fates would be sealed. My arms and legs freeze up. Then, 2 soldiers with gas masks emerge from behind the house, dragging my mother between them. Following close behind are soldiers restraining John, who shouts at them to leave our mother alone. A pair of medics come out at last. They've strapped Eden to a gurney and are wheeling him toward the medic truck. I have to do something. From my pocket, I pull the 3 silver bullets Tess had given me. The 3 bullets from my hospital break-in. I fit one of them into my makeshift slingshot. A memory of my 7-year-old self launching the flaming snowball into the police headquarters flickers through my mind. Then, I point the slingshot at one of the soldiers holding John, pull back as far as I can, and fire. It scrapes his neck so hard that I see blood spray from the impact. The soldier crumples, clutching frantically at his mask. Instantly, other soldiers point their guns up toward the roof. I'm crouched, motionless behind the chimney. The girl steps forward. "Day!" Her voice echoes down the street. I must be delirious because I think I hear sympathy in her voice. "I know you're here, and I know why." She points toward John and my mother. Eden has already disappeared inside the medic truck. Now, my mother knows I'm the criminal she sees on all the Jumbotron warnings. But I say nothing. I fit another bullet to my slingshot and point it in the girl's direction. "You want your family to be safe, I understand that," she continues. "I wanted my family to be safe too." I pull my arm back. The girl's voice becomes more pleasing.